Our panel on creating micro enterprises through CSR and philanthropy, creating a cult of job creators, will be moderated by Mr. Pratyush Kumar Panda, VP and Head CSR at ACC Limited. Pratyush is a CSR and impact investment professional with 25 years of experience, of which he has worked for Care India for 10 years and over 12 years in the CSR space. Presently, he is based out of Mumbai and is serving about 1 million lives every year. Post COVID, he has extensively worked with migrant workers by provisioning food, arranging transport, organizing study on migrants, and also helping migrants to get jobs through Manrega and MSME closer to their homes. He is a member of multiple committees of CII, Bombay Chambers of Commerce, and IMC Mumbai. He passionately works on business sustainability, monitoring and impact evaluation tools, anti-corruption and corporate governance. His project on solid waste management and smart cities has been accredited globally. I would also like to invite our elite panel members, Ms. Kanika Pal, Lead Sustainable Community Development Prabhat, South Asia at Hindustan Unilever Limited. Kanika is an award-winning CSR and sustainability professional with 15 years of experience. She is presently leading the Sustainable Community Development Program across South Asia called Prabhat at Hindustan Unilever Limited. A TEDx speaker, she quit the corporate sector from 2015 to 2017 and founded Solutions for Clean and Healthy Environment, a cleaner planet. Through her work, she has been exploring the interconnectedness between conserving the environment, developing sustainable handicrafts, and enhancing livelihoods and health of communities. Awarded the most influential sustainability leader and woman innovator citations in 2018, among others. She is a lead fellow and alumnus of South Asia Leaders Program by Common Purpose UK, a part of EY Women Business Leaders Network and AI Gore's Climate Reality Leadership Corp. Next up, we have Mr. Rohan Das, Vice President and Head of Sustainability and CSR at DBS Bank. In his capacity as Vice President, Rohan is responsible for spearheading the sustainability and CSR function of DBS Bank in India. He comes with a strong sustainable development perspective, having worked with both corporate and non-profit development organizations. In his career spanning more than a decade and a half, he has worked on large-scale projects in domains including public health, youth social leadership, media for social change, and social impact incubation and acceleration. Over the years, he has built a track record of building differentiated, sustainable, and scalable program models. We have Ms. Richa Pant, Head of Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability at L&T Financial Services. Richa has over 16 years of work experience in conceptualizing and implementing corporate social responsibility initiatives in various industries. Her specialization includes developing profit with purpose development initiatives. Her expertise includes conceptualizing CSR programs that deploy management strengths and skill sets to deliver high impact, value driven social programs. Her work extensively captures shared value in healthcare, skill development, and digital financial inclusion. She strongly believes in the power of collaboration for both achieving scale and sustainability. She is a recipient of the prestigious NUFIC Fellowship on Program Management and Development Sector, and for the development sector. Development sector professionals by Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In her current profile at L&TFS, she heads the Sustainability and CSR function. She also spearheads the Sustainability Task Force and is responsible for the company's first sustainability report that was published last year in financial year 19. We have Mr. Anupam Biswal, a social sector expert. Anupam is a senior development sector professional with over 12 years of dedicated service in social sector, and large part of his experience has been in the field of vocational training, skill development, entrepreneurship, and rural development in India and other countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Thailand, and Malaysia. He has led strategies for designing and the national level programs like DDU GKY, PMKK, and PMKVY. and has anchored and led some of the complex large-scale assignments in livelihoods in states of Rajasthan, Odisha, Bihar, and Jharkhand. Currently, he facilitates discussions around sandbox, fintech, related ecosystems, and startup for health and livelihoods. He has been part of organizations like CHAI, EY, Accenture, DRF, BRLPS, among others. Last but not the least, we have with us Ms. Shilpshri M., Director of CSR and Corporate Communications at Alstom India and South Asia. Shilpa Shri is a perceptive leader, successful communication strategist with proven track record in directing organizations in the visioning of brand strategies, CSR, and public affairs advocacy. She is an astute professional with almost 2 decades of expertise and currently leads the mandate for corporate communications and CSR for Alstom India and South Asia. Under her leadership, the company has touched the lives of many, for which the brand has won several industry acclaim awards. Her result oriented approach and media knowledge has enabled her to execute some of the most successful campaigns in the past and develop reputation of brands. She has led brand and communication programs for brands like Renault, Nissan, and Volvo. It's an honor to have all of you here. Over to you, Mr. Pratyush.
Thank you, Pooja. How much time you are allotting us, Pooja?
So you have 50 minutes.
50. Brilliant. So that 5:10 will sure conclude.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Once again, a big thanks to Bhomik and entire team for such a awesome and flawless, 100% virtual. Yet, attendance is pretty high. Morning when I was here, it was more than 400. Now it's still 165. We'll try to have 165 along with us. Time to go. Coming back to the subject matter, creating micro enterprises through CSR and philanthropy, creating a culture for job creator. If you look at 2017 data, how much CSR created job through its livelihood initiative, especially through micro enterprises and all, it was showing almost like 4 million. 2019, and probably by 2020, when March, when the total utilization has gone beyond 15,000 crores, I think it must have crossed 1 crore in India, and we were still counting. So through CSR, creating of micro enterprises on a traditional way, also in some of the innovative way, has been a basic focus for entire CSR, especially for the manufacturing companies, those who are working across India. In addition to that, some of the IT and service companies have also boosted this sector by bringing out huge investment from outside in the shape of CSR, and also a kind of impact investment, which is a kind of hybrid nature and given to the underprivileged section of the society. With our present scenario, probably that's the only way when government of India, our PM is saying Atmanirbhar Bharat and all, and unless we create kind of local enterprises, it's very difficult to boost the job creator mindset across India and different parts of and corners of the nook and corners of the our country. With that in mindset, it's always pertinent to, especially for the manufacturing companies, those who are mostly dependent on their mining and manufacturing businesses, which are always the interior pockets of India, where the education standards are pretty low, the quality of life are always low, yet without having a better livelihood, sustainable options, it is very difficult to show them a new dynamic path on which they can bring out the high quality of education with them or high standards of living. So that with that note, probably most of the CSR micro enterprise supports that goes pan India is working, and we'll keep on working on those lines. And by bringing a lot of innovations to the sector, lot of new insights, lot of breakthrough in the programming approach, and also by bringing best of the collaborative efforts across a corporate sector, along with NGOs and different line department of the government and also the state government. To start today's debate, I'll first invite Mr. Rohan Das, who will help us to understand the kind of micro enterprises setup that we have in India today, and how they are getting settled, get sustained, and also some of the best practices that he has seen will explain to all of us by which will show us some path that how this thing can sustain, and yet corporate can exit and put footprint somewhere else by bringing some new innovation. Mr. Rohan, if you can start from that note.
Mr. Rohan, you're on mute. Kindly unmute yourself. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, clearly.
Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, CSR Box, for having me today. And Pratyush, thank you for setting the tone and the background for this panel. Looking forward to hearing from all my colleagues from the sector. So I think, it's very interesting that, this year I think has been very interesting for all of us for one big common reason. And I think while it started with a lot of panic and a lot of fear, along the way, I think we have all picked up a lot of observations, learnings, and have seen how there's actually a lot of opportunity that has emerged out of the so-called new normal that we are currently sort of wading through. So I would start by saying that when we are talking about developing, traditionally we have been the kind of micro entrepreneurship models and programs that we have seen would be helping micro entrepreneurs set up their own small businesses. It could be kirana stores, or like a beauty service salon, or so on and so forth. And that has been the typical approach in one way. The other way has been those who come under the purview of the MSMEs, who so that's the other bracket that we have seen. But also what we have seen over the past few years, that while there has been a growing need for livelihood generation in terms of creating job opportunities, where creating livelihoods through entrepreneurship might created lots of jobs, there has also been a constantly increasing need for enhancing existing livelihood opportunities, where we have seen therefore there has been this emergence of the gig economy, where people would have seasonal employment. So if I if somebody is an agriculturist, and the family primarily is dependent on agriculture, there would be some family members who would possibly take up a seasonal job, and that would enhance the overall income of the family. And so therefore gig economy has also sort of been an agent that has enhanced overall livelihood situations of families, especially in rural India, etc. What has now happened, what I observe while working with various social entrepreneurs and various enterprises, is that there is a new approach that is being sort of imbibed at the grassroots, where agriculturists, farmers are being told that, hey, listen, you are a farmer, that's all right, but at the same time you are also an entrepreneur. And so that's one approach which is coming into agriculture, and not just with crops and fruits and vegetables, but also those who are into other forms of farming and other forms of in other domains of food and agribusiness, in terms of say dairy, or those other dairy, poultry, etc., etc. So there is a sort of entrepreneurial approach being brought in there, uh, through various enterprises that I have sort of had the opportunity to work with, and I'll get a little bit of detail on that how that model works. And apart from that, there has also been another way of like, creating micro entrepreneurs who are basically service providers. So like, I think the way, if we have known like, say insurance agents, if there were like, somebody of that kind in a rural, semi-rural setup who was providing services independently and for a fee, he or she is now being called an entrepreneur because he or she is a service provider through his or her like, entrepreneurial, individual entrepreneurial setup. I mean, it just reminds me like, we had like, we have always known of ASHA workers who were like the foot soldiers of like, delivering, ensuring that delivery of healthcare was happening at the grassroots. So if those figures could turn into like, micro entrepreneurs, I think that's the sort of model that we are looking at. Now, in terms of the work that say like, currently I am involved in or have been involved over the last couple of years, both at DBS and like, previously in my other assignment, we are primarily working with entrepreneurs who are setting up their own businesses. So we are directly not working with micro entrepreneurs. But when we are deciding that who are these entrepreneurs that we want to support in terms of our CSR and who is it that we want to work with, we are looking at a few parameters in terms of what kind of impact it would have on ground in terms of livelihood generation and in terms of livelihood enhancement. And there, of course, like, we are looking and picking models where we see like, there are opportunities where like, if we are enabling a certain to set up his or business, which is going to be working very closely with the rural community who are probably engaged in the part of the agri-food value chain, it is going to enhance livelihoods and it's going to create new livelihoods. So I'll give you an example. I think, there are a couple of new sort of enterprises that are currently like, sort of testing the grounds and are entering the agri and food an individual dairy farmer's dairy from his cattle, but also to understand the quality standards and what are the various ways in which a dairy farmer can enhance his or her productivity and thereby fetch higher price and thereby be more profitable. And the whole idea is to be to enable the farmer entrepreneur on ground to look at his his entire business as a business. So currently, like, the rural agri sector and the dairy sector, they don't have access to a lot of other kinds of like, financial services like financing, debt, insurance. So with this kind of technology,
Rohan.
like, enabling this kind of intelligence is making these entrepreneurs at the micro ground level far more viable and sustainable, because now like, their business decisions are way more informed based on like, facts. So that's sort of the approach that we are taking when we are working through enabler enterprises. Yeah.
Thank you, Rohan, for those wonderful ideas and pointers. So now I'd like to go to Richa Pant from L&T Finance to understand what are those key, Richa, please explain us to, for our audience requirement, what is the key decision-making bottlenecks or related decisions which we can jointly take with civil society organization to give a boost to this sector. So for example, I have to say, if we are reaching out to 60 lakhs people on micro enterprise based job through CSR, how can we take it to say 1.2 crores or 2.2 crores kind of reach out? What could be our better decision making methods or new decision that we can take on those lines? If you can highlight out of your huge experience on those.
Yeah. Thank you, Pratyush. I think there are a couple of things we need to take in mind, and I'll share my perspective from the rural areas because we've been working in that space for long. When we start out as corporates, all of us have been doing just proof of concepts, and the kind of scale, Pratyush, that you're talking about can only happen if we look at partnerships model. So while we started off, and just to share with you, some of you might be knowing that we started a program called Digital Sakhi about 4 years back when demonetization was there, and we saw the rural distress which was there in the communities. And the objective was how do we empower women and start teaching rural community digital finance piece. So while we were conceptualizing it, we also thought that this is fine. We are able to create a cadre of women who are employable for the BFSI sector. But what about sustainability? And sustainability is the piece where we incorporate an entrepreneurship angle. And that's the, which I would state it's in the form of running a Digital Sakhi Seva Kendra. To share with all of you what a Digital Sakhi Seva Kendra is, basically it's a mom and pop store having a grocery setup at the background, and while at the same time it runs it's a Wi-Fi enabled, it has a biometric device, it has a POS machine, it has computer, printer, basically helping everything that can promote digital payments. Now, this particular Digital Sakhi, she's an entrepreneur on her own, and this entire exercise is that people come and do digital transaction, he starts earning out of it. And besides that, we're also looking at how this Digital Sakhi can make people aware about various entitlements and government schemes existing, and she can start earning whenever they are able to avail benefit out of it. So this Digital Sakhi Seva Kendra is like it's a completely entrepreneurship program, and what we are looking at is how can we take, let's say right now just about to 25-30 Digital Sakhis to possibly 50,000 Digital Sakhi Seva Kendra running. And for that, like I mentioned, we need to collaborate with not only NGO partners who have expertise on financial inclusion. You were talking about which civil societies we've been partnering with. So we have Seva Bharat on board, which is an expert on financial inclusion and working on women empowerment. We are also looking at tying up with certain state governments like Odisha Livelihood Mission Program. In fact, just to share with all of you, during the COVID times, we've seen kind of struggles the entrepreneurs have been facing. But thanks to the COVID, I don't know, but the entire digital payments have moved up significantly, and that has helped in actually some of the Digital Sakhis who are running Kendra get a significant amount of money. So they earned a good deal during COVID times, because that became a point of source for people to kind of do digital transactions. So what I'm trying to share is, there are certain contrary situations like demonetization or COVID times where digital piece has moved up in the rural areas also. And like my previous speaker was saying, we need to kind of look behind creating entrepreneurs beyond just just a papad making or a pickle making, to something more which is more relevant to us today, which is one of them being digital finance. I'm talking again from digital finance because I come from a financial sector organization. Now, besides that, besides state giving partnership, what we are looking at, if you have to, right now we have 850 Sakhis reaching out to about 8.5 lakh people. But if we are looking at kind of, big scale up models that are existing, like I know some of the models like Google and Tata Trust Internet Sathi, which is running at a big scale level. And there are multiple such similar, like one of them is even Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is running a similar kind of program. So if you're looking at that kind of scale, it has to be multi-sectoral, possibly a tie-up with certain livelihood mission, corporates, multiple corporates also. So just to give you an example, it could be a financial services and let's say an agri-based corporate, or let's say another corporate which is working in a different domain and can give us their expertise. So multiple corporates coming together, as well as certain multilateral and bilateral funding organizations. So really to give from a if I have to imagine, right now from 850 Sakhis to about 10,000 Sakhis, I'm looking at a collaborative framework where everybody all have come together and we promote entrepreneurship on those lines. And I think that's where we look at moving forward. Just to add a bit about, certain another element of this program is also upskilling rural entrepreneurs in agri-allied trades. I think my previous speaker did mention about dairy, goatry, and poultry. Some of similar activities we've been doing with these rural entrepreneurs, but focus again being that once they have access to the seed capital, they're able to do transaction using digital modes. Again, the objective is how we can scale their business, not only by providing them with technical expertise, but also giving them access to credit, and at the same time running an enterprise development program with them. So the more scale up program they have, the more they'll be able to employ people and generate job opportunities. we need to, again, like I mentioned, we can only do these proof of concepts. Right now, we're doing in 5 states. Possibly with the collaborative model that we're looking at, we could extend to the pan-India level. So that's the piece I would like to
Thank you,
rest.
Vichya. Thanks a lot. And now we'll move out to our fellow colleague Kanika ji from Hindustan Unilever. Kanika, tell us with your vast experience across South Asia on Unilever. I know if I have to say, if our social sector has to do a better job on creating more micro enterprises and thus creating a big number of employment opportunity, creating more jobs on the ground zero itself. You know, what could be 4 or 5 major levers on which our social sector fraternity need to play? We all need to together work on those lines so that on this pandemic, the kind of economy downturn we are seeing, and at least to some extent doing CSR and also at the same time helping our own country to grow up to a better standards. If you can help us to understand those 4 or 5 levers on which social sector can work so that more micro enterprises is created at the ground zero and more employability opportunity is created on that same level. Over to you, Kani.
Sure, Pratyush. Thanks so much, and very good evening to all the people who joined from different parts of the country and maybe international as well. I think the key word, Pratyush, here really for us to look at and understand is that we're looking at local economies and local employment generations, right? So what makes sense locally has to be the bread and butter of micro entrepreneurship creation at the very word go. To that extent, I think it's very important to understand what makes people to want to stay in their villages or districts or states. So either you will need to add value in terms of monetary benefit, or you would have to add a sense of pride with respect to what they do, right? I mean, these are also the drivers for any one of us to stick to our jobs or continue to do what we do in our own individual lives as well. So I think the 4-5 key areas where social sector can actually help micro enterprises being created would be: firstly, it has to help in solving a local problem in the community. So if there is a felt need in the village, can the micro enterprise help in solving that problem? So one example that I want to give you is the work we do at Unilever, for example, is in relation to waste. And the previous panel prior to ours was talking a lot on circular economy, etc., etc. So I don't want to talk a lot in depth, but I want to connect the dots there and say that, you know, essentially, if we are able to create waste related enterprise, help them with seed capital, help also raise money from impact investment license with the government, and thereby end up employing people locally to create value added products that solve the problem of waste in the local area, in a village or at the district level. That is one lever which becomes important for micro enterprise creation. To that extent, Unilever, through our own work in Project Prabhat, which is a sustainable community creation endeavor, we are actually working with communities to be able to solve the problem of waste in our own communities. The second lever for me would be, we've all seen reverse migration, and we all know that somewhere at the local level, handlooms and handicrafts have been languishing, and we have not fulfilled the promise for our local artisans to help them connect with markets better. An artisan ends up leaving his or her own craft to actually migrate to a city in the search of job. Essentially, with reverse migration, there is a huge opportunity for us to again uplift a local craft, end up creating enterprises which could be for handlooms and handicrafts. To that extent, again, we have within Unilever, we are working with enterprises in areas like Gandhidham, where we have jute bag making clusters, and we are helping in employment generation participation of women to the tune of 100 in just one enterprise locally. So that kind of enterprise and steady income linking them to the market becomes one another lever that, as CSR projects or as social sector, we can really help with. The third one, which, both Rohan and Richa have spoken about, I don't want to talk too much in detail, but digital for sure in today's day and age is a very big lever for us to create, several micro entrepreneurs coming together on a platform. So we run a program on dairy farmers, which is called Project Moo, which Rohan spoke about in another capacity, but we have a huge program for a milk, supply chain where we connect all the dairy farmers in a value chain and help them to increase the yield while reducing their input cost, as well as making the output much more valuable and connected to the market. So that's digital being used, in a big way in the supply chain, can help farmers or dairy farmers to draw linkages. The fourth one that I want to draw everybody's attention on is there are a lot of self-help groups, farmer producer organizations, common interest groups that exist in any community. At a lot of levels, if social sector and CSR can help strengthen them, I think that can have a huge impact. I mean, we're all hearing left, right, and center about the farmer protests in the country. So essentially, we need to be able to draw sense with where we are existing in our communities, what's happening in those communities, what is it that the stakeholder voices really want, and maybe rather than reinventing the wheel, if we can work closely with all the different stakeholder groups and strengthen some of those farmer producer organizations or CBOs or CIGs, I think that will make a lot of sense. To that again at HUL, through our work, we are working with a lot of our value chain. For example, tomato farmers being used in ketchup. How is it that we identify the gaps in the value chain, help them strengthen the network, and draw more enterprise that have far more sustainability while being part of a larger value chain. And the last one, I think with COVID coming in, there was a huge disruption that happened across the spectrum, with the traditional skills that one knew of, be it beauty, tailoring, etc. I think now is the time for us to also look at jobs of future. So can sanitation entrepreneurs make sense? Can we help create some of those, entrepreneurs which might be needed in the sector, but essentially may not have the skill set in a local economy or in a local scenario? So looking at jobs of future, keeping COVID related requirements in mind, I think these would be essentially my 4 or 5 key takeaways of how the sector can really help in micro enterprises being sustainable and thriving.
Thank you, Kanika. Thank you so much for wonderful pointers. Dear fellow panelists, with all your good words, good pointers, the total participant has grown up from 162 to 175 by this time. Thank you so much. And keep a watch on Q&A in case some question comes around your area. Please answer then and there. Still, we'll have enough time at the end. I assured all our present listeners across India, we'll give you enough time at the question also. Coming back to our social sector expert, Anupam ji, this is what we're listening from our corporate world. Anupam, tell us something about, suppose on the same line, we have to grow drastically, 1:2 ratio, creating more opportunity of micro enterprises at the ground zero, creating more job opportunity at the ground zero. What are the couple of things that you see that of social sector, especially with respect to, if you happen to tell us on behalf of civil society, what are the key factors or bottlenecks that is there, or challenges that you think that the corporate world must provide you or ease out those issues concerned, so that the partnership, collaboration towards a better setup for micro enterprise can grow up in a shorter span in a very big way. Over to you, Anupam ji.
Thank you, Pratyush. Thank you, fellow panelists, for such beautiful concepts, bringing out very clear ideas around on micro entrepreneurship. So basically, if you see the kind of setups we have in the kind of SAR, the scale, it has to get embedded, and it has to be getting embedded more and more with the government, with the system that we say collectively responsible is the government. So how do we do that? That's where I think the maximum contribution shall come in. And of late, we have seen so much of CSR activities in alignment with the government mandates taking place, and that's where the beauty of even setting up more and more micro enterprises would be. So we giving the background, we saw the skill development ecosystem, we saw the Swachh Bharat campaign, we saw multiple such campaigns which actually took off. Poshan Abhiyan is one such example where multiple CSRs have come in and contributed. The thing that actually CSR can do more, or the technical side that CSR companies can bring in, is the kind of competency that they bring on the table with the kind of professional attributes is many times larger than the entire government setup put together. So that's a beauty that any private setup actually brings on the table. Apart from that, what I feel is the resource part. Resource mobilization, when we say, it's not only the part when we talk about the money part, but also apart from that, the technical knowledge, the competency that they bring along with them, the kind of international collaboration that they bring along with them, it's paramount right now. So these are the kind of things that we see. I'll give you a few examples for this that will actually help us to set the context. I have been part of Accenture, EY, I have been part of World Bank, ADB. I still continue to support most of the IFIs in designing. What is core to us right now is when we design any loan, any kind of support to the government, any kind of support that comes out as a sovereign loan, we try to make sure that it is creating income generating patterns. When we say income generating patterns, we try to see that it is actually creating more and more nano and micro enterprises from the word go, especially when it comes from skill development mindset, or it comes from anything related to education. I'll give you a very small example. One was in one of the ADB projects in Meghalaya. We saw the project was largely for skill development, but we realized very quickly that this thing was not going to work out till the time we address the need of the people on the ground and very quickly turn it around in terms of what the native needs were. We created an integrated farming training concepts way above than the average cost norms. Almost 15,000 farmers, small and marginal, were trained, out of which in the second wave, which is the second phase coming in, we are trying to put more than 5,000 entrepreneurs who would address to the local economy, which will actually create and also sell locally and strengthen the food supply systems. So that is the kind of ecosystem we created. And it took us 5 years, first 5 years, to establish that ecosystem, link them back with one of the cooperatives like Meghalaya Cooperative, Apex Banks, and then try to leverage the funds. So it's not only our loan, not only government loan, but also the ecosystem that is. So we got a leverage of 1:7. So that's a huge leverage if you see in terms of what we try to do. Similarly, I'll give you a very simple example as a catalyst how CSRs are contributing. IKEA Foundation contributed a very small amount to do action research pilot for what community water treatment plants. Madhya Pradesh, typical area of fluorosis, has a lot of problem, and typically people suffer from fluoride related issues. So what we did, we introduced a community water treatment plant that was non-RO, advanced technology, resin based, and then embedded it with the SAG systems. It unlocked government's 350 such units by just demonstrating one such unit. It was anchored by Clinton Health Access Initiative. And then now that demonstration has led to many Netherlands donors to come in and fund for it. Government system has unlocked more than 350 such units for MP. Clearly a kind of a benchmark which sets rolling, because every state would have their own need. We are already talking about tap water systems, but it's at least a decade time till the time the tap water systems safely provide the drinking access to every individual. So what do we do? So we actually turned around the same community water treatment plants which had sustainability issues, which had management issues, by putting an entrepreneur. We actually identified a local entrepreneur from SC/ST community, leveraged a government entrepreneurship fund, which is coming to as a subsidized 30% subsidized rates, and then his skin is in the game to run it as an entrepreneurship model. And similar models are now getting scaled up with SAGs, the community-based systems with SAGs coming into picture. I'll very quickly sum up two more such examples, which is coming up in these days. We are trying to leverage the entire MSME ecosystem by integrating it back with the FinTech International Institute, that is Gift City. The idea is how our unorganized segments of MSME can actually be leveraged by getting the blockchain AI introduced for addressing the MSME's core problem areas. That is where we are also putting up an entire sandbox model. So our entire designing is including micro and nano entrepreneurs from the day zero. And that's where we are anticipating in years to come the return on investment for every such investment that we are making in a large scale. Let it be funded from a sovereign fund, let it be funded from a CSR, international donors would have better returns. I will pause here and I will let Pratyush to take over from here.
Yeah, thank you so much for those apt and precise point. And again, numbers goes up to now 175. And I'll get back to now to Shilpa Sri. Shilpa Sri, you head corporate communication CSR for entire South Asia. Must be having a rich experience on both the way. Tell us something about what are the are you still facing some kind of incubation shortfall with respect to micro enterprises in India? Number one. If yes, what are the way out? How can we encourage those incubations to take place faster in a qualitative way in India? Number one. Second, do you feel that with your communication background also, how can we communicate the entire thing of CSR bringing out providing 2 to 3 crores of employment every year? What should be our communication channels? So two way. One way is on a shortfall of incubation, other way is with communication. Over to you, Shilpa. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Pratyush. And firstly, I'd like to thank CSR Box for this opportunity. I think Rohan, Richa, Kanika, and Anupam have, in fact, Richa and Kanika, I think, stole away some of my lines as well. So, but it's nice to see that all of us are echoing the same kind of sentiments and coming together. Just to give you a little bit of background of what Alstom does as compared to HULs of the world or DBS, I think we are fairly small as compared to the actions that we do. But the fact that we build trains and metros, which are the least carbon consuming vehicles for mass transport, itself helps us to make a big leap into contributing to sustainability. So that's the good part about it. Our main interventions at Alstom are around Bihar, a place called Madhepura, where we have our factory, and then a little around Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Coimbatore. These have been the primary areas that we work in. Now, primarily coming to what is it that we've noticed and the learnings that we have from the social sector, rural entrepreneurship, what is it that is lacking? See, while innovation is needed, productivity, competitiveness, a social cohesion for any of these setups in the rural areas to come together is needed. From what I have seen and from my experience that I've had of meeting some of these mostly women entrepreneurs that we actually support, is something that's missing from their database or from their minds at this point of time is market awareness. So I was just 2 weeks ago with a set of women, and even today, this place is about what, 2.5, 3 hours from Bangalore. Not even a very, you can't really call it completely rural as well, because you've got engineering colleges around that place, etc. People are still talking about getting 2 rupees on a papad. They have no idea of scalability. They have no idea about what it is that their product can actually gain for them in the market, what an end user is actually paying for the product that they're creating. I think that's one thing. And they are not completely aware, or, they're happy in their own small cocoons of, saying, I don't want to know what's the subsidy. It's okay. I'm still okay to work with cash. Technology, I'm not so technology aware. So it's fine not to get into it. So I think we should help them build sustainability models. We should teach them how to market themselves. I think, and frankly, when I talk to a lot of the NGOs who work with them as well, even some of our NGOs, especially the smaller ones, I don't think the bigger ones actually need marketing training. They can train me on it. But at least the smaller ones are unable to build a momentum for the people that they're supporting. They're not able to go out there and talk on favor of them, because I think they again lack the marketing that an Amazon or somebody else who's a so-called aggregator is able to do. I think that's one thing that we can all support with, because today anybody has to get incubated. They, whether it's an IMP, whether it's NHR cell, whether it is say Gs of the world, whoever is trying to fund is always looking at a face or a person who's able to represent them in the future. So that's what one sees to even give them the funds. So I think we should help them, and aggregators should be a little more humble in supporting to rural entrepreneurs. And like, I think it was Richa who mentioned about partnership models. That's something that we can never touch. We will not be able to reach the kind of numbers that you're talking about. And I don't know if it was Rohan or Kanika who spoke about the papads and the powders. I completely agree. I think we should go beyond that and think of rural entrepreneurs. There's sanitation, there's say sports and recreational activities that they would get into, something related to wood related activities, wholesaling, say usage of fossil fuels, what is it that they could do there, some logistics, poultry, dairy, I think are the next steps actually, that they should actually get into. And these are the kind of businesses they should get into. NGOs, I should start representing these people more, in the sense, while you do build, say put self-help groups, etc. But NGOs will have to become the face for them in terms of standing and saying that, okay, there's take a step forward and then say, we're going to aggregate across 3-4 states and see how is it that we can get funding for everybody and show results for each of them. Also, the other thing is, I think it happens with all of us corporates, right? Ultimately, we're seeing how many beneficiaries, what's the impact, I will fund you only if something is happening. So the whole storytelling and true storytelling should actually come from, a bit from the entrepreneurs, of course, and the next set from the NGOs, because we all know that only the story spun out correctly is when we are able to buy it as well and increase funding. Now, we should also teach our entrepreneurs to share risks and the benefits, and this whole COVID situation and the reverse migration is actually something that we should see as a great opportunity to rebuild what rural India was and help them. They don't really have to come back in exodus into the cities. They can stay where they are and still make money, contribute equally to the to the society and to the economy of the country. And somewhere, while we do say technology and all that stuff, we should kind of focus also more on ownership models, on finance models, service delivery models for them, because today everybody's looking at product is done. Once it's out of my, it's out of my door, then it's fine, like the way it goes. They're happy with the money that comes in. So people should start thinking big, I think, more like look at the delivery model and how they can sustain it. Because when I think COVID happened, a lot of people, even large enterprises and all that stuff, have shut shop to a large extent, not being able to sustain openness that these people have, some NGOs that come together, etc. And incubation, like I said, is going to happen only if. So again, what happens is you get incubated for a year or two. Are you able to scale up the enterprise after that? I'm not really sure many of them can do it. After those 2 years, they're happy. I mean, like, itna paisa aa gaya, then they're back into their own lives. How many of them actually have been able to scale up or livelihoods for much more people? I don't think that's happened. But companies like HUL, which have a very large retail setup, are reaching the ends of the country. I think can help build that actually and give a fresh look at how we can innovate in the value chain. So that's what I have to add from my experience. And like I said, our work is much smaller than what everybody else does, but from what we've learned is that people need to know where they are, what is the market that they're standing in. They're still in a very rural space. They're not too sure what product, how much money they can actually command for their products, etc. So that awareness is something that, we as corporates can actually build, train them on as well. That's it from me, Pratyush.
Thank you, Shilpasri. Awesome things for all of us. Again, we are on time. Maybe a rapid round I can do with all of you. So suppose we have to create more job creator on the ground. On the any random order, you can tell us in one line or one word. Say what is the one word coming to you? Suppose CSR, civil society jointly were asked to go for create more job creator. What is that one word that we discuss or that is coming to your mind? Anupam?
Sorry, I was on.
Unmute
Sorry,
yourself.
sorry, I was on. I
Yes,
think
what is the
target
one
the-
word?
I think the one word would be target the migrants who have gone back to the society. So
Migrants.
we have talked so much of positive migration. There has been reverse migration that has happened. I'm sure there will be outliers. There have been so many cases
Correct.
just even more faster. If we have that, many states have tried to do it. I saw the Rajasthan portal. I have been part of the UP discussions. Clearly, that is the thing. But sometimes we are a big we are cumbersome in our systems.
Okay.
We move very
Okay,
slowly.
got
So
your
that
point.
has to.
So migration is the word. Kanika ji, any one word coming to your mind when we say creating more job creator and ground zero? Anybody?
Okay, I'll go next. I think more than job creation, what we can actually enable is, what we call in lay terms when you talk about people, job preparedness. You train them to be able to get jobs. So there are jobs out there. It's not that they're not, but I don't think these people are actually geared up to pick up those jobs confidently. I think that's where we should invest a little more, because there are jobs, there are ample jobs, but how is it that these people actually are able to get those? Is because you have to prepare them to be facing those and, be equally competent to somebody, in an urban area or something like that, to be able to pick up those jobs. I think that's where we should invest.
Very quick.
Yeah, Risha.
Yeah, hi Pratyush. So two words actually come to my mind. One is, of course, rural, because rural is an area which I feel would revive faster, especially after COVID times, than urban. We've already seen the trends. We can see it in business for sure. And then digital. So I think a combination of rural and digital it's a way forward for the entrepreneurs. And there also I would focus on the women entrepreneurs. So that's again clearly a demographic piece we need to harness on. Yeah.
Yes, Rohan.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of the views shared so far. But my phrase would be enabling the enablers. I mean, my work for the
so especially the civil society you are talking about.
So basically, my work in the past few years and in my current work at DBS, we are essentially working with social enterprises who are actually delivering impact on ground. So it is very
Rohan, I'll stop you here. We are already 5-5. So dear fellow panelists, kindly look at your Q&A box in case there is some question directly coming to you. Please address them. So just to conclude it and time and handing over back to Pooja, the 5 words that has came to my mind, I was stretching them out together. How it's coming to Sikka, the coin. So Sikka is SICCA, scale, innovation, collaboration, capacity building, and agility. Probably this is 4 or 5 things that is coming to my mind while listening to my all panelists, and that goes back into my mind as well. Let's see what best will show in 2021 March when we'll report how much employability or job creator that has been created ground zero through CSR. Thank you, everyone.